Football, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, look at the hat. Danny Kelly, senior staff writer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show, Ringer NFL Draft Show. His weekly appearance all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by two diehard Huskies, Manny and Roger. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years, makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodhisattva IPA, hosts of your other favorite beers. Their tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Hey, I want you to pick up there, Danny.
Yeah.
The off-season decision. I know we're 9 games in. We got half the season to go. And I know we discussed this a little bit last week. But I'll pose the same question I just kind of asked the audience. Do you think they're one player away, the Seahawks I'm speaking of, one player away from winning a Super Bowl?
No. One player away, no, I don't think so. I think
one piece away.
No, I don't. I think there's a world in which they could make a couple of moves. They could have a good draft class, and that makes them a much stronger contender for the Super Bowl. But if you're talking about just trading for someone or going out and signing one big player, no, not really. I think there's just too many pieces, too many moving pieces right now that they need to work on.
Because that's what I was talking about yesterday with Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree was, if you get into this, and let's say we were just operating under the hypothetical, they're 6-11. They go 6-11.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, at that point, I think the DK stuff will be back on the table, whether or not they're going to trade him. They'll have to make a decision because it's one or two things. You're either going to trade him or you're going to sign him to a long-term deal. And then what do you do with the quarterback? And do you want to commit? Can this organization commit the money that it would take to re-sign him if you still have a hole at left guard, a hole at center, a hole at right guard? And at this point, Dan, as you and I are talking, we don't know what we're going to get with the right tackle situation with Abe Lucas. Can they afford to do that in the offseason? I think that's a legitimate question.
Yeah. There's so many questions with this team. You said 6-11. I don't even know if that's insultingly low or if that's realistic. I'm still kind of on the fence on what that feels like.
So you're trying to find the 2 more wins?
I'm like, are they going to get, because I think their over under was 7.5 this past year, and I was offended by that. I'm like, man, I hope they get over that. So I don't have to walk back any of my takes, because I always thought they'd be a much better team than that. I still think they could still get over 8 or get to 8 wins, but I think what makes this team hard to evaluate and to figure out is just they look so different every week. It feels like, that Falcons game, they look pretty good. They look like a pretty good team, a team that was going in the right direction. And then, of course, they just kind of regress or look really sloppy in other games. And, you start to wonder what the plan is here. You start to wonder how they're ever going to get the offensive line fixed. If the defense is going to come together. So there's a lot of moving pieces, like I said. And I don't really have a strong feel for, this coaching staff and all of that. There's too many moving pieces for me to really figure this team out.
What did the Dotson move yesterday mean to you? What did that represent?
Probably not buying in. I don't know. That was the first thing that came to my mind was not getting buy-in, not being the type of leader that they wanted him to be or something along those lines. I don't have any inside information on what happened there, but my first thought was just this is a symbolic thing where they're just okay, if you're not going to buy in, if you're not going to be part of the future of this team or whatever, then we're going to get rid of you. What was your take on that?
I think similar to that. I think it was also maybe they went to him and just said, hey, we might go into, have you play a little reduced role, maybe play Knight a little bit more. And then he's like, no, I'm not signing up for that. F you, man.
Right.
I'm leading the team in tackles. I'm starting every game. No. And maybe it was a little bit of that. And then he wasn't open to that idea. Or it was just simply, hey, I don't, maybe it's the easiest explanation sometimes, Danny. Maybe it was just, hey, this guy is not playing the style we want.
Right.
Let's just pull the plug on it now. Let him have a fresh start. We drafted Knight for a reason. Let's see if we can get Knight up and running. But it's the thing is they knew, when they made these moves, Danny, they knew what type of system he ran. So why did they sign these two guys? That's what that's the thing that I'm trying to I know they're getting a lot of praise yesterday and today. Well, the Seahawks are, one of these organizations, they know that when they made a mistake, they'll pull the plug on it immediately and not further the mistake.
Right.
But the mistake was if you saw these guys play, you saw their film in Buffalo and Miami, could you not see that they wouldn't fit your system that you wanted to run? I don't know.
That's why I think it's more of a personality thing, personally. And again, like I said, I'm not operating off of any inside info. I'm just kind of like reading between the lines here. Like when you have that type of surprising sort of mid-season weird move, it just feels like there was like some tension between like what they were expecting from him and what they're getting from him, and it was just like maybe they're making an example of him or whatever whatever happened behind the scenes. I don't know, but it's like weird timing, especially since he's like their starter and they don't have a lot of depth at the position like already. It's like the thinnest spot on the roster, and they just release their starters. There's something going on there. I have to believe.
Well, because you got Knight, who you drafted, but then the other guy I've never heard of before. The Thomas guy? Where the hell's that guy? I never even heard of this guy. Drake Thomas? Yeah, you're right. I mean, they've got no depth at a position in which he tells everyone, does McDonald, like, hey, man, this is like, we ask a lot of our linebackers. And now we're gonna ask a lot of our rookie linebacker, to come out and perform. So, it's weird because we talked about this last week and, a little bit even today is that, will they get in the offseason and start thinking rebuild? And I was thinking about this week. I'm like, you know what? They're already in a rebuild. They were in a rebuild this past offseason when they fired Carroll and hired McDonald. That was the start of the rebuild.
Right. You just can't call it. You can't call it that. Everybody wants to use some euphemism. A reset season.
A reset. Oh. What did DePoto always use? Like reimagine.
I love the corporate jargon that you get into when you're talking about this type of stuff. I mean, I think right now what's very clear is the Seahawks are not a Super Bowl caliber team. And I guess like you could like what else is there at this point? Like you have to be honest with yourselves about like what you can do and who you can be. And I think the Seahawks probably know they're not going to win a Super Bowl this year. That's why they're moving on from Dotson. That's why they want to get some of their young guys probably more snaps. It's I think that they probably are aware of who they are. It's just you can't say it out loud.
Yeah. Okay, so I think these next 2 weeks are pivotal as for fans and how they should root these next 2 weeks. If they lose the next 2 weeks, we can wrap it up. Because I know I still think there's a belief and there still is a shred of hope that, hey man, they could go into San Francisco and maybe knock them out. And maybe the Abe Lucas return is all they needed, Danny. Mm-hmm. But if they lose, to the Niners and they come back home and they lose to a Cardinals team that's playing great football right now.
I know they're playing really well right now.
So you're 4-7. At that point, to even have a shot, you'd have to run the table.
Right.
Okay, so they're not going to do that. Doesn't it, as a fan, as much as this sucks, as much as you like to put, Blue Friday and paint your face and get hammered, shit-faced drunk on Sundays, you know what you need? You need them to lose the remaining games of the season.
This is a weird, right? It's a weird place to be. I think there's a huge difference between knowing what you need or knowing what's good for you and like actually feeling it in deep in your soul. You know what I mean? Like it's really, especially for a team that's had so much success over the last like decade plus. It's like, I always joke with my co-host of my podcast, Danny Heifetz, that the whole time I've known him, basically since 2016, he's just always been rooting for the Giants to lose, even though like he's a Giants fan. He's like, there's been like 1 year where they went to the playoffs, I think, since I've known him. Every other year, he's like, come on, man, we got to lose. Like, we got to get a better draft pick. It's just like this perpetual thing. It's like, Seahawks fans haven't really experienced that for a really long time. There's always kind of like hope. There's always the chance that could be a plucky team that gets on a hot streak late in the season. And of course, there is still that hope right now. I think their offense is good enough, and their defense last week looked like encouraging. So like maybe there's something to work with here. But if they lose the next 2 games, then chances are really, really low. And ultimately, like it's probably better that they lose games. I do think that there's something to building a culture, building confidence in like the coaching staff and coming together as a team. Where if you're losing a bunch of games, that's not going to help.
No,
like
the
draft pick. The draft pick is not as important as establishing some like culture and toughness and like grit, I guess, for lack of
finishing
a better word.
Strong, playing good. Your ideas, your program, your culture is working. Danny,
buy-in.
That's for smart people. Like, I'm a dumb person. Like I what you just said is 100% right. I look at it as I just want the shiny toy in the draft pick.
Right.
Whoever that is. And now you're going to tell me. I mean, a lot of the work you do at the Ringer is covered in the draft. How is the draft this year?
I would call it like a meat and potatoes draft. It's going to be like offensive linemen, defensive linemen.
Oh, wait, stop. Isn't that what they need?
I mean, yeah, it's great. I think it's actually like it lines up well with assuming that we don't move on from Geno Smith. The quarterback situation in this draft is right now, as it looks, not great. Like, it's not like a super strong class.
Who's the best one in your opinion right now?
It comes down to probably Cam Ward. And for me, Garrett Nussmeier. You're a Cam Ward guy, I assume.
Yes and no. I just
a little bit hurt that he left.
Hurt, not so much hurt. I just didn't. He was so at Wazoo. He was so frustrating because there'd be plays that he'd make that you'd be like, oh my god, like that is that's an NFL throw. But then there'd be these other plays where he'd like fall back and he would drift back and he would take like these 25-yard sacks or throw against the, roll to his left, throw back against the field in a pick. And you're like, what are you doing?
I think that's the story of this draft, though, at quarterback. It's like, you could say the same, like Shadur Sanders, I think is probably going to be up there, but he's like he's like barely 200 pounds, 6'1". I don't know if he's like has these elite traits necessarily. Okay. So I think there's going to be a ton of question marks about him. I think Garrett Nussmeier from LSU is definitely pretty interesting. But I mean, all these guys, all the quarterbacks in this class have like had really up and down seasons. Yeah. Carson Beck came into the season. Carson Beck, Georgia quarterback, came in as probably like the de facto number one of the class, and he's probably like a day 2, day 3 pick now. If he comes out, he might.
I'm not sold on Beck because he has weird tattoos on his arms, and I'm not sold on a white quarterback with weird tattoos.
Old school,
Just I don't know. He doesn't do it for me. It's such a.
It's you remind me of like the scouts from Moneyball. Bad
totally.
face.
Bad face.
Have you seen his girlfriend? His girlfriend's not very attractive.
Well, I think some of that stuff's important. Funny that you brought up Moneyball I'm sick and I'm dealing with the flu and I fell asleep last night, like early in the evening, watching Moneyball. What a great movie! Like Moneyball is when it comes on, you just got to watch it. It's like that, Shawshank and Hoosiers. Can I just? I want to circle back to Shadur just for a quick second because I'm not. Like I'm really like hot and cold with him sometimes because there's some stuff that he does that really like irritates me. Like he got into it this last week with a ball boy for Texas Tech because the guy was trying to get the ball back because it's theirs, and like he got in his face like, dude, what are you doing? Like he's just trying to get the ball back. But there was a game that I watched this year against Kansas State. Kansas State ends up winning in Boulder. But all of his wide receivers are knocked out of the game. Hunter gets hurt. Either Hunter doesn't play in that game or gets hurt early on. And then the other kid, who I'm blanking on, is it Horn, who is his second best wide receiver, gets knocked out in the game. So he's down all of his targets. And he damn near leads a comeback. And he is sitting in the pocket. He's getting the shit kicked out of him. But he is delivering ball after ball. And I just remember watching that game that night going, maybe
something there. Yeah.
If you take away all the other drama with him, the Dion, I know, but maybe get him out of Dion. Are him and Dion going to be a package deal together?
That's I think the fear with probably some teams is like, okay, who like the head coach going to sign off on this when you got like Dion potentially coming for your job or whatever?
Yeah.
I think there's just like there's baggage with Sanders that. Okay. Some teams might not be into, especially considering relative to, I think like his physical traits, like being pretty average. I don't know. It's bottom line, like to round out like the whole discussion. Like, I think this is a weird quarterback class. Like I don't think any of the guys in this quarterback class are going to be anywhere near like the Drake May, Caleb Williams, and why am I blanking on his name? He's the most famous person. Jaden Daniels. There's like, that class to me, I think, is like head and shoulders above what we're going to see in 2025. But like, you never know. There's still enough time for someone to kind of emerge. But yeah, I think that this class will be down there, and it's just going to be like offensive line, defensive line. There's some interesting pass rushers. There's some interesting corners. There's definitely like a handful of receivers that I like, and a bunch of really good running backs actually. But I don't know. I don't think Seahawks fans need to be tripping too much about like getting really high pick in the draft. Like I don't know if it's like necessarily worth it to like tank in this draft particular.
Well, I mean, in a couple of weeks, if they do lose, I mean, I'll start the campaign.
Yeah.
I'll wear it for everyone.
That's fair.
Imagine getting the number 1 pick. You get Travis Hunter. You play him both ways. It'd be great.
I mean, that would be fun. That would be a lot of fun.
You brought up Caleb Williams' name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who could have saw this one happening, coming to fruition? Shane Waldron's going to, not be a good offensive coordinator and then ultimately gets fired yesterday. We talk a lot about this, and, as we get closer to the draft, we'll probably talk more about it, Danny, it's and you know this, it's so much about fit. It's so much about where the guy gets drafted, the quarterback.
Yeah.
It's got to be, the system's got to be right. And I still just, for the life of me, what the Bears were doing, why did they keep this coach? Why did they do it? What was the point?
I think honestly, it's because the defense was good down the stretch last year. And I think they wanted a little bit of like continuity from that. But I think it's classic Bears. They just chose the wrong coach. I think Waldron, I never really understood the Waldron hiring. And it's funny because I think they interviewed some of the like hottest offensive coaches of the season, like Cliff Kingsbury. I think they interviewed Liam Cohen. They interviewed, who's been doing really good things in Tampa Bay. There's a handful of other guys. Kubiak with New Orleans, they interviewed him. So there's like they ended up just picking like the guy who did by far the worst. And I think like obviously there is some blame to be placed on Caleb Williams' shoulders, like for the struggles they're having in this offense. Like he just does not look like the same passer that he did last year.
He just looks scared.
He's just not. He's like really just struggling. There's I think a lot of things going on. His accuracy is just all over the place. He's forcing the ball. He's just not playing loose. I saw Daniel Jeremiah said this the other day, and I think it really resonated with me. It's essentially he's just like he's not being aggressive. He's not playing like the quarterback that he was in college, where that was like the identity of who he was. He's like going out, gripping and rip it, and he's playing like to not make mistakes in this offense. And the irony of that is like the offense is doing absolutely nothing. They haven't scored a touchdown in like 3 games. So I don't know. There's something going on with Caleb Williams, obviously like a confidence thing, like a chemistry thing. But I think big picture, like you said, there's a lot of moving parts. I think the offensive scheme was not built to accentuate his strengths whatsoever. The offensive line is a disaster. And what we thought looked like a good receiving core has turned out to be like a net negative, I think, overall for the Bears. Like DJ Moore, I don't know if you've noticed, but like his vibes are out of control bad this year. Like his body language is terrible. There's been a couple plays I've noticed where he like, there's one play like 2 weeks ago where he like went out of bounds in the middle of a play and like stood on the sideline in the middle of a play. And then there was another play I noticed earlier in the season where he like just didn't come back in for a key third down in the game. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? I think DJ Moore like hates Caleb Williams. I think Keenan Allen is probably washed at this point. And then, I think the signing of DeAndre Swift has looked pretty good in retrospect, but like a running back is not going to make a huge difference if the offensive line sucks. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, and then Rome Odunze, I think he's gonna be good, but he's just coming along as a rookie. So I don't know. I think what we thought on paper looked like a really good support system prior to the season. I did too. I fell for that. I fell into that. I thought this was going to be like a really good situation for him. None of it has worked out. Offensive play caller disaster, offensive line disaster. The receiving core that we thought was going to be really helpful and good has been sort of the opposite. And all of that combined, like Caleb Williams is just playing horrible and he doesn't have any accuracy, even though he was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college last year. So it's just an unmitigated disaster. I mean, his numbers are awful. It's starting to like creep into my mind that he might be a bust, even though I do still believe in him. It's tough.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so much talent there. I think you got to nail whoever the next guy is, whoever the next offensive mind is. You got to hire him, get the best one available, give him the job, and let him turn around. There's just too much talent there with Caleb Williams. Did you happen to see, speaking of Eberflus, his interview yesterday? in Chicago,
where he was cutting out, his cell phone was cutting out.
This is the funniest thing.
Yeah.
And especially the host. I don't know if this is the Bears flagship. I'm going to assume it is because rarely does the head coach ever go
Just
on
call into a random
radio show. So I'm assuming this is the flagship. But this is Matt Eberflus going on the flag. I'm going to assume the flagship in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And he's having cell phone problems.
All those experiences.
The
guy on the left.
Coach?
Is the best.
He's losing his mind.
Coach, your cell phone's as bad as the offense right now.
All right, we'll put him on hold and see if we can reestablish.
The best is the look on the guy on the right looking at his co-host like, dude, did you just say that? Like, we're never going to get the guy on again, man. He's not going to ever come on.
And then he's like, we're trying to reestablish contact.
We're trying to reestablish contact. This guy on the left is like, F this guy, man. He is a train wreck. I got to play it again. I just love the...
Look at the body language. Oh, God.
Coach, your cell phone's as bad as the offense right now.
All right, we'll put him on hold and see if we can reestablish.
And see if we can reestablish.
Do you know who that guy, the white guy is? I don't know who that is.
I don't know who these guys are.
He was on one. He was like, "Can we get him a landline? It's 2024."
Oh, God, it's so good. So good. Yeah, just a train wreck there. Then you talk about, Kingsbury. I thought Kingsbury. Yeah, there's the thing about Kingsbury. That guy's going to get another head coaching job easily in this league with what he's doing with Jaden Daniels. Now, whether he deserves it or not, I don't know, but he's going to get one for sure.
I mean, I think he does. I think the offense that they're running makes a lot of sense for what they're trying to accomplish and what their quarterback does well. So it's funny because like this is just a perfect example of why the NFL is so unpredictable. I feel like is the Commanders in the offseason sort of by default ended up with Dan Quinn. It felt like they wanted everybody else, and then they're like, okay, well, I guess Dan Quinn still doesn't have a job, so we'll hire him.
We'll take him. And now you're like,
people were like sad about it.
I got somebody asking me right now, would you trade him right now? Would you trade Quinn and Kingsbury for McDonald and Grubb? I'm like, yeah, but does Jaden Daniels come along?
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Jaden Daniels
does the quarterback?
Along? Yeah. Hey, before you go, it's fantasy football. It's Waiver Wire Tuesday. What do you got for every one of us out there struggling with guys out, running backs done, receivers done? Who's a hot pickup this week?
Not a lot of great pickups this week. I think Audric Estime for the Broncos kind of came out of nowhere this past week and was the starter. He got like 80% of the snaps or whatever it was in 14 carries. And so he looks like the guy for them going forward. And obviously Sean Payton could change his mind and sort of ride the hot hand, but Audric Estime at the running back position is the big one for me. Trey Benson for the Cardinals is a good stash. I think he started to come on and look a little bit better. And with the way that James Conner runs, just pure violence at all times. If he misses any time, I think Trey Benson's going to have a ton of value. And then at the receiver position, Ricky Pearsall, I thought looked pretty impressive, and in past rookie receivers have always had really good second halves of the season. Like that's been like one of the most bankable things in fantasy football over the last like 3 or 4 years is like rookie receivers getting their feet under them and having a really good second half of the season. So he could have some value as the number 3 there in San Francisco, and Deebo's always hurt, so maybe even the number 2. And then Mike Williams, good stash just to see kind of how everything kind of goes with this Russell Wilson thing. And if Mike Williams is the number 2 there opposite Pickens, I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. They're going to throw him the ball in the end zone a lot. That's kind of Russell Wilson's thing. And so he could be an interesting stash player. I wouldn't play him right now just because they're still kind of like getting him ingrained in the offense. And then at tight end, Mike Gesicki for the Bengals, as long as T. Higgins is out, this guy is a huge part of this Bengals offense, and there's no quarterback basically right now. I guess Lamar Jackson and maybe Jaden Daniels playing better than Joe Burrow. So trying to get a piece of that offense, I think, is always a good thing. If Higgins is out, Gesicki is a must start in fantasy.
Okay. All right, we started this a few weeks ago. Before you go, we're put somebody on the barge. We put somebody on the barge. They got to the Pacific Ocean. They never get to come back unless we get to bring them back, and unless we decide to bring them back on the tugboat. And we got a brand new little soundbite too for it. There you go. There's the barge. There's the barge. The barge is. So Danny,
Yeah.
I want to ask you, who are you putting on the barge this week?
I am putting one Jerry Jones on the barge. Jerry Jones has lost his marbles. I'm pretty convinced right now, like, they need to do the Biden thing and replace him somehow.
Yeah.
At the 11th hour. He's losing it. This sun thing, the sun in the stadium at Cowboy Stadium is like the funniest story in football to me right now, because every week it feels like, I know it's not every week, but it feels like every week the Cowboys are like bungling a play badly because someone is just blinded by the sun that comes into the stadium, which is totally predictable, and they could have known this. And for whatever reason, they refuse to put up curtains, even though they do put curtains up in concerts and things of that nature.
And even when McCarthy does his press conference, they put it up.
Oh my God. You can't script this. You can't write it.
All right. So Jerry Jones on the barge. I
on
love
the
it.
barge.
And he can come back. I'm going to put on, I'm going to play it again. There's the barge. There it is. He can come back. He can come back. And maybe for a few weeks. I'm going to put John Schneider on the barge for a few weeks.
I like it.
Schneider's on the barge for a few weeks for just mishandling this linebacking situation in this offseason. Just a bad offseason for
Schneider.
the
O-line, man.
And the O-line. He can come back, though. He can come back for sure. All right, Danny. Appreciate it. Danny Kelly with us every week. Senior staff writer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show, Ringer NFL Draft Show. His weekly appearance all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. Check out the website, georgetownbeer.com. Tap room open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Follow Danny on Twitter, Danny B. Kelly. Check out his episode up on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button. Also, listen to it on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And, of course, up at pucksports.com. Thanks, Danny. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good.